Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today I thought it would be interesting to have a look at all of the changes that have come to Guild Wars 2 in the past 9 months since it launched. I found myself looking through old patch notes, as I often used to do with Guild Wars 1 the other week, and thought it could be quite interesting because actually if you have a look through, there's been quite a lot that's changed. I suppose this video could quite quickly and quite easily become like a pitch to people that have quit about whether they should come back to the game, and if you have quit then maybe feel free to use it as such, but for me, this is just kind of a look at everything that they've added so far, how they've been adding stuff in terms of like month to month, and kind of using that to see what they might go with in the future, because this has given me a lot of insights, I think, into kind of how they're working, that as I was just experiencing the game as it was being updated month by month by month, I didn't quite realise. And I suppose this is a nice way to put a cap, if you will, on the first 9 months or so. So yeah, let's get started. I'm just going to try and sum up every major thing that's changed with the game. This isn't everything by a long shot. These are just kind of the big things that I think really meant something to people when they came out. And I've tried to keep in mind stuff that, you know, people might have quit over but now has been fixed or changed. And I think I've been pretty thorough with it. I went through every single update note there is. And just grabbed the best of the best, I think. So first of all, we'll have a look at significant fixes and tweaks that they've made to the game. This isn't specific content expansions or anything, and these are by far not the only fixes or tweaks, but these are kind of the big ones that I think have really helped tune the game up. Like, the game launched in a pretty buggy state. Do you guys remember all of the skill points that were just all broken all over the place and just ungodly amount of issues and blocking issues? Well, yeah, that was a pretty sore state for the game to come out in, but a lot of that's been fixed now. So let me go through the list. First of all, I've put, this is in order as well, generally, in a kind of chronological order. First of all, I've got the camera was fixed. At launch, the camera was a buggy piece of arse, basically, especially during jumping puzzles. It's still pretty bad if you're on the wrong race, but I think most of that comes down to just the size of your character, rather than the camera now. The camera used to be crazy, and a lot of the patch notes you can read that were going out early were, oh, we've made this tweak to the camera, we've made this tweak, we're hoping this will improve it. And I think now, I don't really, either it's because I've been playing the game a long time, or because they've genuinely fixed it. I don't have any problems with the camera anymore. Could also be because I play in Asura most of the time, but yeah, that's kind of my experience. The camera has generally been fixed, I would say. Another thing to do with the camera as well, sort of, is that they did, if anybody remembers, improve the field of vision by default. There was like a command line augment you could use when the game launched to expand your FOV, but they've just made that the default. They did that a while ago, so now you basically see more stuff on your screen. I believe it was a vertical FOV fix, so that was quite nice. And then I've got here, skill point blocks have pretty much all been fixed. I haven't been blocked by a skill point for a long time. There's only one blocking issue I can think of that still exists in the game, and that's to do with getting a certain point of interest by firing yourself out of a cannon in Diasa Plateau. Dynamic events generally have been fixed. Not many of those block anymore, except the one I just talked about. And dungeons, every single month, without fail, there's been tons of updates to the dungeons, mostly fixing bugs that shouldn't have been there in the first place. But now they are mostly gone, and I don't have many issues in dungeons. I used to have a lot of issues in Citadel Flames, just because I used to run that so much. There was a really annoying section in Path 2. You know, these things all spring to mind, and mostly they've all been fixed now, which is great, but I would not put it past Arenanet to continue adding updates to the dungeons as they exist right now, because they haven't stopped. They are merciless with it. It's just every single month there's just more changes to them, which is good. It shows that it's an ongoing process. They obviously kind of had difficulties creating this content in the first place to be bug-free, but, you know, we're coming up on a year after the game's launch now, and I would almost guarantee that anyone's first time through these dungeons, until you really start speed clearing them or going through them a lot, you're probably not going to run into any issues. Another thing on that topic I kind of want to throw in there too is with Guild Wars 1 there were tons of issues just like this that never were resolved. I was talking to someone about Guild Wars 1 and like how good it was the other day, and you know, I think it's easy to forget that in Guild Wars 1 there were tons of blocking issues. Characters would get stuck on chests that spawn, they'd get stuck endlessly trying to heal your minions, their AI would just freak out and they'd stop moving. This place was rampant in the first game, and I do now really think that Guild Wars 2 is less likely to throw you up a blocking issue in your personal story or in dungeons and so forth than the first game ever was, but that's just a bit of an aside. There has been significant profession balance. This is another thing, a very general thing that I'm saying here, but every single month there has been huge changes to every single class. If you look, it's like they've had one big patch goes out every month, and there have been endless changes to the professions to try and keep them true to what Arenanet originally wanted. Sometimes there's been quite big changes, like the Guardian was hit pretty weirdly early on when they changed sort of the mechanics of retaliation quite significantly. There have been various changes changes to engineers as well, and I believe the Rangers just got a pretty big change to their pets, but whether that actually affects gameplay too much, I don't know. I don't think it does that much, but the professions generally every single month have had huge changes to all their skills, so if you're a bit bored or none of the classes really inspired you before, I don't know, maybe they will now. Maybe some small thing that was irritating you is now fixed or resolved. Another big problem that really wound me up when it happened to me was the Mystic Forge at launch was basically taking loads of your money and your hard-earned items, and it was supposed to give you something good in return, and it never did. A lot of the recipes were completely bugged out. Those have been fixed. That was a massive problem, and it really irritated me. I like to see it there on the patch notes, so I thought I'd throw it in here. Another big thing that might have been winding people up that now seem to be a thing of the past are spammers. The game really struggled with bots and spammers for about, I would say it was worse, like 2 months in from launch. They were all over the place, and you get tons of mail trying to direct you to gold selling websites, and they even added a reports feature specifically for that. I haven't been hit with a spamming mail for months now, months and months now, and I haven't really seen any bots either. I may have seen them and they're just very clever now and they're hiding, but there's no swarms of bots or anything anymore. They're basically gone from the game. These things are interesting because you notice them when they're there and they're a big problem. So I kind of wanted to bring that up because it's easy to forget about that stuff, and then you don't appreciate that it's actually been resolved. So yeah, that was a big thing if you quit about that time. They're gone now. Underwater combat, I don't know, this is kind of an interesting change. I do want to mention it. Underwater combat's basically been tuned up a little bit. It's still basically just a spam fest, but if you do want to look a little bit deeper into the system now, combo fields were made to work underwater, which does provide some interesting things. Like Elementalist, for example, who I play mainly, is not a class that gets stealth, but now with combo fields underwater you can, because we get a blind field down there which we can blast into stealth ourselves. So there is a little bit more interesting stuff going on with underwater combat, but the game never really encourages you to partake in that too much. You can still get away just by spam. But I will throw it out there because at least they made an attempt, and I'm hoping they'll make another attempt at some point. Character name changes are now available, and complete makeovers. This is sort of a significant fix or tweak in my eyes. It's an addition to the game, really, an extra feature. This was something I know at launch a lot of people were asking for and looking for, and it just didn't come for a very long time. But if you made a character that you just, like, you'd misspelt their name, maybe, and it wound you up, or you had that weird Asura bug at the start where you made a max height Asura and their neck went really weird, which also has been fixed, by the way, that's now all resolved. You can either buy character name changes or get complete character makeovers, which can allow you to change sex of your character as well, by the way. Or you don't have to buy them at all. They can just drop from black line chests if you get lucky. Or, of course, you don't have to spend real world money at all. You can convert your gold into gems as ever and get that stuff. So that's quite nice, and I think that was a much needed thing. It's not something I've used too much. I've used like 2 total makeover kits just to slightly change my character so it looks like she's aging over time, which is an interesting way to use the feature. But, you know, these are big things for MMOs, which Guild Wars 2 just didn't have at launch, and it's now there. Another thing, I know I had an engineer friend that always was endlessly wound up about this. Sigils now work while you're holding bundles. This might seem like quite a specific tweak, and I haven't listed many specific ones here, but this is very big for some classes, namely engineers. Those upgrades that you can get for weapons, sigils, that would allow you to get all these bonus effects on the damage you're doing, were not working while you were holding bundles. So some classes, which basically, like the engineer, that only operated with bundles, were completely screwed out of an essential part of their item. That now works fully, and that benefits also elementalists using their conjure weapons, and so on and so forth. So that's very cool too. And lastly, for me, this is my favourite significant tweak or fix. Really, this has changed the game massively for me, and it should have been there at launch. I'm going to say that over and over on this video, I swear. Titles now appear beneath player names. Who cared about titles at launch? Seriously, and that was so disappointing. Titles were like the main thing players were working for in Guild Wars 1. That was like the thing that would encourage you to continue playing the game, get something to show off to people, right? They just were not a thing in Guild Wars 2. You had to directly target someone and be specifically looking out for what title they might have chosen to show you. That's not the case anymore. Titles just always appear beneath people's names. It's much more obvious, and therefore it's much more rewarding to get a nice title too and to start collecting them. I already kind of had quite a few titles when this update came out, but I can tell you for sure that if I hadn't gone for those, I would have been really motivated by this change, and it just kind of helps bind a lot of what the game's about, a lot of the titles, a lot of the things you're being rewarded for together, because now it feels a lot more significant. That's a huge change for me, really, and I think it's one of the more recent ones as well, but I think it really deserves mention here. So those are kind of the significant fixes and tweaks. That's not new content, and that's not necessarily done by the month that it came out. So now I want to run us through exactly what's happened on a month-by-month basis, like the big stuff. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into like crazy minute detail, because then you may as well just read the wiki. But I will go through basically once a month. Arenanet has added some massive change to the game. They really have every single month without fail. Maybe sometime around January, February, there wasn't too much going on in terms of that, but we'll get there when we get there. So I want to just go kind of month by month and show you guys what new content and what new features there would now be waiting in the game if you've kind of been out of the loop for a little while. I think that's a good way of kind of explaining this video. It's if you've been out of the loop, this is what's going on. I've kind of always felt with my channel there's like this big pressure to always be covering new stuff that's coming out, even if it doesn't particularly hype me up. Well, this is a nice way for all those people that still got their eye on the game to kind of come and have a look. So yes, before October, and before the Halloween update mainly, we had three big things happen. First of all, Arenanet started on all of the ridiculous profession balance and started fixing all of the skill points. This was when that started to happen. Although serious blocking issues, I feel like were a big priority for them. Anything that stops people getting world completion or stopped them getting through their personal story quests, which did reside in the game for a long time, this was what they were really focusing on at that point. But there were two other big things that kind of happened. First of all, they enabled you to start crafting with your items directly from bank. So if you were playing the game as a bit of a crafter but found it all a bit tedious and cumbersome, that was a big change actually that I forgot they even had to make early on at the game. Crafting's much easier now and much more streamlined, because you don't need to have all these crazy crafting materials in your inventory itself. They just get automatically pulled from your bank while you're at a crafting station, which is very nice. That was one of the earlier changes. And also just after launch, something I think a lot of us questioned whether they should have just put off launch of the game until this was ready so they could announce it as kind of a core feature of Guild Wars 2, was they did release the game for Mac. I don't know whether anyone still really remembers this. I'd completely forgotten. You can play Guild Wars 2 on Mac. It's supposedly in beta right now. I think it's mostly functional, but it's got some problems with it. I did tweet out and ask some people because I don't play on a Mac. I've heard that it's basically just a cider port, which I have no idea what that means, but I believe right now it is serviceable at least. There hasn't been much news on it leaving the beta stage, but you can play Guild Wars 2 on Mac. That was very weird when they released that. I really do. I remember very clearly having a few conversations about how they should have just waited with the launch of Guild Wars 2 until they could say, right, this is a PC and Mac game. Wouldn't that have done them some favors instead of trying to tack it on at the end? But in any case, it is there, and that was kind of all really that happened before Halloween, I've got to say. There was a lot of stuff that happened, but it was all just fixes and getting the game into a state that wouldn't make people rage, basically. So then Halloween came on October. This added a lot of big stuff and kind of introduced one of the key philosophies, one of the key things Arenanet have been doing with their updates that I didn't really appreciate until I looked at them all together like this. And that's that every month, Arenanet has added some kind of temporary content to the game. They've added something big, something cool, some new feature, some new thing to experience that will only be in the game for a short period of time. For Halloween, that was the Halloween Festival. That was the return of Mad King Thorn. And this was a huge festival that spanned over basically 4 acts. And it introduced an entirely new realm that people could go to explore. Loads of new crafting materials, loads of new items, loads of unique skins. It added, I believe, 2 different PvP game types you could experience. A really cool jumping puzzle, probably one of the hardest the game's ever had, and really got quite a lot of infamy, and I think is probably one of the best features they ever added to the game, as well as a lot of other stuff, exclusive Halloween items, and big changes to the overworld. But all of that stuff was only temporary, so each month when they had temporary stuff, I'm just going to say what it was and then move on to the permanent stuff. However, I will say Arenanet are 100% expected to bring back Halloween next year. Whether that's going to be Halloween in the exact same incarnation again, I don't know. I would personally be pretty happy with that because there was so much that they added, but it's very likely as well that owing to the nature of Halloween and the fact it's kind of a continuous story that's been going on since the first game, I would expect them to add even more changes to it as well and even more new stuff, just like they did with their holidays in the first game. But that was kind of Halloween. All of that Halloween stuff happened. If you were someone that's quit the game, by the way, and you bought like some of those Halloween skins, like the Chain Greatsword or Arachnophobia or the Crossing or any of these Halloween items, they're worth hundreds and hundreds of gold now. Just throwing it out there. There's not many on the trading post, and you are now a rich person. So I'll just say that. Aside from the Halloween stuff, though, we did see a lot of permanent changes to the game too, which can still be experienced now. If you were to install the game right now and play it, you would see that what they also added in October was an entirely new mini-game, basically. Whenever you use a tonic or a costume in the game now, you can actually play in sort of a mini fighting game that I suppose can work as dueling if you want it, called the Costume Brawl. Every single tonic in the game and every single costume has its own set of unique skills and abilities, which you can use to battle other people in the Costume Brawl. And it's not just 1v1, you could have 3 people fighting, 4 people, 5 people. It happens anywhere you want in the entire game. It's not the same as dueling, but it is a pretty fun distraction if you want one while you're waiting for stuff to happen, like maybe you're waiting for a dungeon. It's a pretty cool little addition. There's titles that you can still get for it. I appreciate that they've added it. It's an extra little fun distraction until you get bored of it, for sure. Another big thing that they changed in October was they started giving out jugs of karma for completing your daily and monthly achievements. This was a big change. Karma was kind of hard to come by before this, and in particular, it cost a lot of karma to get your legendary weapon if you were going for one, as well as various other things. The jugs of karma kind of added a lot of incentive to go back and do the daily and monthly achievements, which I think people were starting to get bored of just as this update came. So that was a big change, and they make a lot of further changes to daily and monthly later on in the year, which we'll get to. Beyond that as well, they added 19 new achievements and areas and like puzzles and exploration things to exploration achievements. So there were loads of new exploration things to do in the game, 19 of them. Not only that, they also added a new type of achievement entirely called jumping puzzle achievements, which were originally just bundled into the explorable achievements. And then they added 4 new jumping puzzles to the game as well, which did expand the areas of the world you could go to. They basically made Tyria bigger in some instances and added some pretty cool jumping puzzles. They also added some interesting achievements in the explorable category, like the diving goggles you could find around the world. You now get an achievement for finding all of those. So these are fun extra little things you can do. And remember what I said about how titles now appear underneath your name? There's real incentive to go and do them now, and they are very fun. Like, they will keep you occupied for at least a couple of days, I would say, if you were to go through all of these achievements now. And it's good, solid content. It's fresh content. Also, at the same time, they added 30 new events to the world, just all over Tyria, just 30 new events. Namely, they added the Skritt burgular, which is kind of an interesting event that's got achievements tied to it, revolving around this character that explores all of Tyria, and if you're lucky, you'll find him somewhere, and you get a chance to kind of attack him while he's running away and grab presents from him, which is pretty cool, and it will transform you while you're chasing him. Just an interesting little dynamic event feature that I would kind of like to see expanded at some point, but I don't know, at this point with the game, they've added so much other stuff, I kind of want to see that go forward first. But yeah, so that was October. A lot of stuff happened in October. I've very much glossed over what happened at Halloween, for sure. That's a lot of new things that added to the game, and that was all the permanent stuff too. So then we come to November. An Arenanet called the November updates the Lost Shores. This was a time with lots of controversy for the game, that I think, even at the time, I thought was completely misguided. But we'll get to that. So first of all, for the Lost Shores, the temporary changes included basically a large event where a new type of enemy, the Karka, which are these giant crab monsters, attacked Lion's Arch, and they destroyed the lighthouse in Lion's Arch. The entire thing got blown up. It was a huge event that tons and tons of players from all over the world started playing in, all at the same time on the weekend. It was laggy as hell, it was not smooth, and most people kind of left it feeling quite grumpy. Arenanet, I think, learned a lot of stuff about the Karka event there, and we haven't had an event like it since, just because I guess their servers cannot handle it, or whenever they have done events vaguely similar, they've made sure they've had the infrastructure for it. Nothing has been so laggy ever since, in my opinion. But yeah, so this was kind of a bit of a split update. Some people really liked it. I love the premise of the event with these things attacking Lion's Arch and us having to fight them off, but it just didn't run very smoothly. It was very laggy. I think if Arenanet ever figure out how to get rid of all the lag issues, we could see some really cool stuff along these lines come back. But this was all that there was for temporary. They just added this big event where these guys attack Lion's Arch, and then after they've attacked Lion's Arch, we kind of fought them off into a new area of the world, which was, again, very laggy and kind of boring, the events. But what did happen at the end of that event was tons of legendary precursors dropped on like a scale we have not seen ever since. The reason why I don't have a legendary in game is because I turned down the opportunity to buy my precursor for like 80 gold, and ever since then it's been like 500 gold and just rising and rising and rising, and I can't justify spending the money after I turned up 80 gold. So it was huge. The precursors that dropped in, it was massive. So I mean, people were very thoroughly compensated and rewarded for being in that event, but it was very laggy and largely boring. That was the temporary stuff. Now, permanent changes in November, they added an entirely new area to the world, not just like a small section of a current explorable area, but an entirely new explorable area, about medium-sized, that was in the Sea of Sorrows called South Sun Cove. Largely, that's been lacking content until very recently, which I'll get to later. But on South Sun Cove, they added new crafting materials, just like they did in Halloween, expanding the crafting, and new stack combinations of items as well, so you can get different kinds of builds going forward. And then, along with South Sun Cove, which at the time was lacking a little bit of content, they basically overhauled the rewards people were getting from dungeons, because the dungeon rewards at default didn't feel particularly strong, I must say. They added special types of loot that you can get from the mini bosses as you go forward, and they spread out how you get the tokens, which was pretty cool. They changed the downscaling mechanics so that you can get much greater rewards while you're in like a level 60 area. This meant that people didn't have to flock around all of the time, and really opened up the game. It was sort of the first of many steps Arenanet have been taking to try and spread people out all over Tyria, which again we'll get to as we get to the other updates as they come. But one of the biggest thing, probably the biggest thing that they added, isn't that they added an entirely new explorable area, but they added basically another new game type to the game, sort of a dungeon-esque game type called Fractals of the Mists. And it's quite an intricate game type that basically is a dungeon that you can play that consists of lots of mini dungeons that, as you continue through, gets harder and harder and harder and harder to a very, very high degree. And as it gets more difficult, it also becomes more rewarding, and you get much better drops and much better money from participating in it. A very, very solid game type, incredibly strong. I still, most days when I get into Guild Wars 2, find myself running at least one Fractals of the Mist, because it has daily rewards associated with it, it has a long achievement track associated with it, and it has a lot of other new gear associated with it. So now, as an extension of this new game type that they added, which really is a very solid, in my opinion, rock of the Guild Wars 2 experience now, they also added a new type of gear, and this was what caused the most controversy, but actually might be something some people were looking for with Guild Wars 2. They added a new tier of gear called Ascended. So you have rare gear, you have exotic gear, and now you have Ascended gear. At the time when Arenanet announced this, a lot of people were scared that the game was just going to turn into this massive gear grind and just become this huge treadmill. Nobody listened to them when they said that basically this was just to bridge the gap between exotic gear and legendary gear. People kind of freaked out, to be honest. This was about the time I got very jaded. I didn't do a YouTube video about it. I didn't agree with people freaking out at all. I still don't. I think some people still think it was a bad thing for the game, perhaps. But this really hasn't impacted my experience with the game whatsoever. If anything, it's added a solid extra set of gear that I can go for and aim for to get those little statistical increments in the game. I can understand why people were very concerned about it, but you know, it's been many months since this was added now, and I feel like the game hasn't devolved into what we see in other MMOs in any way, shape or form. I think it's been a really solid update to the game, and it means that I've still got stuff to work towards for my character. I still don't have a full set of Ascended gear on my character. So I think this was really good, really strong. It was kind of tied into Fractals of the Mists in a way that I think muddied the water a little bit, but I don't have to get into here. In general though, those were two big changes to the game. If you were someone that like maxed out all of your character and got all the exotic gear, you should know that there is a lot of new gear you can get now that takes a long time to get, and is generally rewarding in a more traditional MMO way. So yeah, big changes in November, quite divisive for the community, I would say, but you know, that's what the game's like now. In general, the game hasn't changed that much at all. There's just more to go for, there's more to play, and the Fractals of the Mists is a new like game type that is renewable content for me. I have not really got bored of it at all, because each individual like mini dungeon you play there is in general very well designed. It's some of the best designed content they've done. The gameplay is at least somewhat more unique than what you see in the regular dungeons of the game, I'll say that much. Anyway, right, if I don't... This is going to be a long video, okay? I wasn't sure how I wanted to film this video. I wasn't sure if it was going to be, like, a super short, quick pitch where I just, like, roll through the list, or whether I, like, give my thoughts. I suppose this is what you guys want more, so, yeah, we'll roll with it. Okay, so that was November. Big stuff happened in November. I'm sure I'll get a couple of comments, people saying, oh, no, the Ascended gear is horrible. I think it's fine, though. I always have, and I'm not worried about Arenanet adding another tier and another tier and another tier. I just don't think that it would be smart for them to do, and I don't think it's necessary for them to do either. When you look at the fact that people have alternate characters that they can play, decking out every single character in your account with full Ascended gear would take a long time, so That would be kind of my moment where I'd say maybe it's a good idea to add another tier, because there's nothing else to go for. But that's just going to be such a distant goal for so many people. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, right, so then we have December, 1 month further forward, and we had the Wintersday update. Again, this introduced temporary content to the game. The temporary stuff entirely revolved around the Festival of Wintersday interior, which is basically the process of celebrating the new year. They added like loads of dungeons, basically one new dungeon that changed every day of the week, essentially, called Tix's Workshop, which was this giant airship that flew around to all of the main cities and looked very cool, I must say. They added some new mini games. They added another new PvP game type that was exclusive for the festival. They added even more crafting materials, basically the same as what we saw for Halloween, but obviously totally new and fresh and different. They kind of followed that same formula. They added another jumping puzzle, loads of new minis, loads of new exclusive gem store items for the temporary content. In addition to that, now there was a big change for Wintersday. Wintersday did add a lot of that temporary stuff. There was less permanent stuff on Wintersday. The preceding month in the Lost Shores, we kind of had much less temporary content but loads of permanent stuff. And now for Wintersday, we had the reverse of that. We had quite a lot of temporary stuff but not so much permanent. These were the big changes though that I can really pinpoint that they made on Wintersday, in addition to the blocking fixes, the profession balance and stuff, which was ongoing every single month, as I say. They basically overhauled the way that the Black Lion chests work. This was when they added a lot more of the juicy items to Black Lion chests, such as permanent bank access and permanent merchants wherever you are in the world, which can be bought and sold on the trading post, by the way. And another thing of note was that the lighthouse destroyed last month was now being repaired. And that kind of continues on to this day. Like, there's been a progression in Lion's Arch as stuff's been destroyed and been rebuilt. It happened at Halloween too. So yeah, not much permanent stuff, a lot of temporary stuff though, and this is temporary stuff that you wouldn't see if you went in game right now, but next Christmas it would be all over the place, like, and probably expanded upon it too, as I said, for Halloween. Right, so now we get into 2013. 2013 was a little bit different because obviously the Karka event bombed a little bit with the lag issues. They needed to find a new way to do their kind of temporary events that weren't based around festivals and didn't introduce a lot of lag. And they basically invented a new concept in January, and it started to roll out around about now. This was the concept of the living story. This is basically continuous updates to the live game that sort of expand the personal story beyond where it originally concluded. The personal story of Guild Wars 2 takes place in 1 year, and the present day in Guild Wars 2 right now is the year after, and we're kind of seeing the story progress beyond there. It's sort of like an expansion for the game that's been slowly rolling out. There's a lot of kind of controversy, I think, about whether they should be doing the living story like this or just focusing 100% on putting out a real expansion. I know people are kind of divided on that. I was always under the impression the developers were working half and half, but it doesn't look like they are. They did confirm that they weren't doing an expansion for a while, though we did hear from NCSoft actually that one is due out for next year, so take that how you like it. But basically this is their idea right now. Before an expansion comes out for Guild Wars 2 in any case, they are slowly pushing out like more personal story stuff, basically. Much more, in my opinion, traditional quest-oriented content. They're not traditional quests. They're doing it through the mail system, and they're doing it through some new features called the Heralds, but basically they have got more story that is slowly going out depending on when you log into the game. So as I say, this began in January with just very small changes. We started to see differences in the maps. We started to see refugees slowly flowing into the Black Citadel and Holbrak, and the story of some mysterious new enemy or alliance in that region of the world oppressing the Char and the Norn was being born. And over the next few months the living story progressed, and I'll talk about each progression as we go. But for January, not much happened with the living story. It was just sort of hints, just as Arenanet were finding their feet and learning how they were going to be delivering this stuff. So that's kind of what happened there. Beyond that, we did have a lot of permanent stuff. So once again, they looked into the daily achievements. Do you know how I said we started getting Jugs of Karma? Well, now we started to get Laurels. They had an entirely new system into the game, a new currency into the game called Laurels. You would get 10 Laurels for completing your monthly achievements and 1 Laurel for completing each daily achievement. And Laurels could be spent on new items and gear from specific vendors you could find in the capital cities of the game. Some of that gear was new Ascended items. So the way that they've been rolling Ascended items out was originally when Fractals of the Mist came out, you could only get Ascended rings and Ascended backpacks. Now, with the laurels, you could get yourself Ascended amulets too. So this was a way to get more Ascended gear, as well as a lot of other stuff like drop boxes, which you could double click and would have a pretty good chance to get exotic items out of, depending on your profession. There were lots of cool stuff, and there is still a lot of cool stuff available from the laurel vendors. So as soon as this change happened, I feel like this was when completing your dailies and monthly achievements became a lot more enticing to do, because you were getting a lot of karma from it, you were getting all the original rewards, including the experience and the gold, but now also you were getting these laurels, which could give you some pretty interesting items from these new vendors, which was very cool. They also added entirely new daily and monthly achievements. Like before, it was just do the same thing every day. Same thing, same thing, same thing. People getting a bit tired of it, so there's a lot of variety in what you can do there now. And also, a little bit later, this didn't happen in January, but a little bit later as well, they made it so that you have the option of which daily or monthly achievements you actually complete, which is awesome. So you have a choice between lots of different specific things you can go for. You can choose to do underwater combat, or you can choose to kill enemies in a certain area of the game, or you can choose to do events in a certain area of the game, or you can choose to do world versus world specific stuff. That choice is now yours, and there's a lot more variety in what you can go for, which is very, very cool. And some of them are quite easy to complete as well, like as simple as go to a vendor and buy something, or just go to a vendor, which is cool. So really, with these two updates, daily and monthly became very fun. I'm pretty sure a lot of players you'll find now with the game, they kind of log in each day, they play for about an hour while they complete their daily stuff, and feel completely fulfilled, and they're still working towards something. So that's quite nice. It's a nice way to keep people going. And yeah, it gets you a bit enthusiastic to get in game every time, even if you may have seen all the other content that's out there, which is getting harder and harder because they're adding so much more. But anyway, another big change that they made in January was they enabled you to start guesting. Guesting was a feature we were looking for ages. They finally added guesting in January, and also home servers are now important. You pay to change home server properly, but that changes depending on what popularity the server you're going to is. So that was all fleshed out. Those were plans that Arenanet had announced long before the launch of the game. Took them a while to roll it out, but it's all now there. All the infrastructure's fully in. They also massively overhauled Ore in this update. They had kind of a swing and roundabouts. When the game launched, sort of everyone was spending all their time just grinding the same event in Ore. And then when South Sun came out, everybody kind of left Ore and started doing other stuff because they improved like the scaling for the rest of the world. And Ore just kind of became abandoned. And now with January, they kind of rebalanced Ore again, and they improved the rewards you could find in Ore again. And this included a reasonably nice karma sink, sort of, something to spend your karma on at least, but it would also give you a lot of karma back, so there's that, which gave you new minis that you could now get in Ore. All of the vendors that were available at the end of the God Temples now had exotic gear that you could buy off of them for karma, which was a really nice touch and a nice way to kind of get some of your characters kitted out. They also overhauled the way a lot of the God events worked. They added new waypoints, they added new UI elements to see how the God events work, and generally Ore is a lot more flashy. The enemies themselves had updates to give them new skills or to make them look cooler or just be more pronounced. So Ore was much cooler, and now I guess there's a bit more of a balance between do you want to be in Ore or do you want to be in the rest of the game, because they're both kind of as enticing as one another. They rescaled a lot of the loot you get in Ore too, so you get a much wider variety of crafting materials and so forth. It's good. It was a good update to Ore. That was a big thing that they did. And lastly, in January, a lot of people will say that Guild Wars 2, the only thing you have to go for is a legendary weapon once you've seen everything. That may be true, it just depends on the kind of player you are. Regardless though, in January, the Arenanet had another look at the legendary weapons and added a lot of new flashy effects. So maybe if you got one but you weren't too impressed and that's when you left, a lot of them have now got flashy effects. Namely, one of the bows is ridiculous now, but a lot of them have got like nice little aesthetic upgrades, which is a very nice touch. So that was another big thing that they did in January, in addition again to all of the tweaks and profession balance and so forth. So, February came along and we had the second chapter of Flame and Frost, which is the living story content that originally was going out, called The Gathering Storm. This added some more tangible stuff to do. It added some new achievements to the game, and basically it progressed the story of Flame and Frost even further. There were rumours and speculation in the first month that maybe this new enemy was the Dredge and the Flame Legion Char allying together. This was kind of confirmed in the February patch, and there were lots of events added to Diessa Plateau and Wayfarer Foothills, and just general content was added and changed and tweaked, and new things were out there to see in the world around that area, which was very cool. It was like a real progression of these zones. If you were making a new character at this point and you went through, you'd start seeing a lot of new stuff, which is good because, again, before the game came out, Arenanet used to speak about how one of the strengths of dynamic events was that they could just slowly roll them out into the game, and every time you went into a map, if you were like to level a new character a couple of months after your first, you would see different stuff, and their original plans for that sound quite ambitious, and I don't think they've ever really achieved what they were looking for at that point, but definitely you can kind of see the start of that happening. That really did start in February, and I kind of commend the start of that we saw that there. Yeah, but that was the temporary stuff. The permanent stuff, another much needed feature. They added item preview on the trading post, which hadn't been there and lots of people wanted, and item preview in general was just improved a lot. So it's much easier to see the skins that you like. Guild Wars 2 is still, despite the fact ascended items are in the game, Guild Wars 2 is still very much built on the philosophy that it's cosmetic over statistical. The stuff you're going for is generally because you want to look cool, not because you want to have some unfair advantage over other players, or because you feel forced to get better stats so you can complete content. That's kind of always been their philosophy, and that was kind of hard to resolve with Guild Wars 2 when you couldn't even preview items on the trading post, and preview itself was kind of bad. They fixed that finally in February, a big change given the overall themes of the game. Another one that I feel like should have been there at launch, is kind of ground zero stuff that they need if this is the game they're building, but they finally did it in February, so that was very big. Felt like I should mention that. Another big thing, so I've already mentioned several new types of permanent content that they've added to the game. Here was probably the biggest, I would say, except for maybe Fractals of the Mist. They added a new type of content called guild missions. A big thing with this game for a long time has been that people kind of felt guilds were a little bit pointless. There's no guild halls. I don't feel like the game needs guild halls, but there's also no raids. There's no real sense of grouping together and having that community. And I can totally understand that, and I think Arenanet understood that too. They added a new type of content called guild missions, which, as the title would suggest, is content that you and your guild can participate in. There's real progression now for guilds. When the game launched, you could earn influence to kind of unlock extra stuff, extraneous stuff that you maybe didn't really need unless you're a world versus world guild, but influence generally wasn't that amazing at the game's launch. It didn't get you too much, and there was nothing that the guilds could really band together and participate in. Well, February really changed that a lot. They added guild missions, which isn't just like one generic type of content. There's actually 5 different types of guild missions. There are bounties, treks, rushes, challenges, and puzzles, all of them very distinct and very engaging and requiring kind of the might of a full guild to participate in. There were some problems when this first came out because people felt it was too punishing to small guilds, because it would take a lot of influence to unlock the new types of missions, or it would take a lot of players just to complete this content, which Arenanet did kind of tweak as further updates came out. But to that, I would still say that don't forget Guild Wars 2 is a game where they deliberately allow you to be in multiple guilds, so you can be in the small guild with a couple of your friends, and that's fine. If you want to complete this stuff too, then just pick a larger guild that all of you and your friends can go into together, and collectively you can participate in that content too. I don't feel like that's a particularly valid criticism of guild missions, and aside from that, there wasn't much criticism for it at all. It's still a very strong mechanic. It takes a long time to unlock all of the different types of missions that are there, so a lot of players are still kind of climbing their way up through it, so to speak, and enjoying what the game's got to offer there. It brings that essence that other MMOs get so easily through raiding, for example, where you feel like you can band together and actually do something together as a group, and it gives a real purpose to guilds, which is very nice. And with that came lots more unique rewards, lots more unique types of gear, new skins, and also a new type of ascended gear, ascended earrings. And with the earrings, that completed being able to get all types of ascended accessories, which is nice. I don't know what the word is on whether we're going to eventually be able to get ascended armor too. I'm not sure on that at all, but we'll see as time goes forward. But yeah, so with that kind of completed getting all the ascended stuff, and if you, for example, weren't playing when ascended stuff was first added, and now you came into Guild Wars 2, you would find a lot of stuff, a real clear progression that you could go through, and a lot of different content you could play. You would find yourself able to complete lots of dailies to try and get yourself some ascended stuff. You'd find yourself pushed into another new type of content, the Fractals of the Mist. You'd find yourself pushed into guild missions and to all different areas of Tyria, experiencing fresh content basically to get this extra gear for yourself, and it would take a while to do as well. So there is a real kind of solid groundwork for players coming back into the game, what they want to do now to move forward, which is good. I feel like people need kind of a purpose and a direction, or a lot of the time they do, and this now, all of these updates together have kind of paved that, I feel like, for Guild Wars 2. So I do think it's kind of quite friendly for people who might be coming back. But yeah, that was the permanent stuff for February, the main permanent stuff for February. Moving on to March, we were still going on with Flame and Frost for the Living Story stuff. Living Story stuff, if I'm not entirely clear on it, it's temporary content. So if you were to log in the game 3 months from now, different stuff would be going on interior, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to complete the Living Story that was going on if you'd logged in today. And I guess this is Arenanet's kind of attempt to have players always coming back in, because they feel like on a week-to-week basis or a month-to-month basis, there's like another chapter, another bit of the story. As someone once put it, like another TV episode. Every week you go on and you've got this extra little thing that you can play forward through. So Flame and Frost was still going on. March introduced us to the Raising, which added a lot more significant stuff. This was kind of the biggest Soul Living Story update for me. This added even further changes to the maps, as well as new events and achievements to the game, but also it added fully voiced by voice actors that you were listening to during the personal story, fully instanced almost exactly like personal story missions to the game, that introduced us to new characters that, as I say, were fully voiced and were actually reasonably interesting to play through. So for the first time, Flame and Frost in March felt very strong. It felt a lot like a continuation of the personal story. We got to go and speak to Ritlock again, and we got to go and speak to Air again, and we learned pretty fascinating stuff about Air as well, about how she's actually a mother. You know, it was very, very interesting and very well done. That was the temporary stuff, though. Also in March, they showed us an entirely new set of weapon skins called Fused Weapons, which were totally badass. They were quite cruel, though, about it, because they only dropped from Black Lion chests, which I guess is a way to nickel and dime people, which I wasn't too happy with. But they did add all this new stuff. That was the temporary stuff. You can't get it, all the Fused Weapons anymore, because Flame and Frost is over. But it was very, very strong content that they had in March, definitely. As for permanent stuff, this was big as well. They added leaderboards, finally. So leaderboards for example, World versus World. There are now official leaderboards out there, not just a crazy forum post. We can actually look at who's doing best in World versus World, where you're ranked. That really adds a lot to the World versus World experience. You'll notice I'm not talking about World versus World or SPVP just yet. That's because I'm going to go over those in a second. But that was kind of big. And in addition to that too, they added leaderboards for player achievements. So your achievement points that you got in the game that were pretty much useless before. I remember when the game launched, a lot of people were basically like, oh, what am I supposed to spend these on? Because they used to be able to spend stuff like that in MMOs. You can't in Guild Wars 2, but they are now used to compare yourself to other players, basically. There are real leaderboards out there, and that's really strong for me. I think that's a really good incentive. That's a good reason for people to go back through these titles and achievements. If you remember what I was talking about earlier in the Halloween update, when they added all of these new explorable achievements and stuff, there's a lot of achievements in the game that people just weren't incentivized to go for, and that do take you to genuinely unique and interesting content, and provide a different experience for Guild Wars 2 that you might not really appreciate there. No one was incentivized to do it at all, but now, with the changes to the laurels, for example, for the daily achievements, as well as these leaderboards for your total achievement points, definitely a lot stronger, and the change to the titles appearing under your character, really this stuff all looks a lot stronger now, and it all ties into itself much better. And Arenanet have finally got the game to where I feel like, again, it should have been that, you know, this again is ground zero to me. This is stuff I should have got in game, and I should have seen this stuff here, and I would have been a lot more excited about doing it before, rather than just having completed it because there was nothing else for me to do a few months ago, you know. But now that swap's been made, and if you've been out of the game for a while, you've kind of got this to experience and to enjoy. Beyond that, they continued adding more guild stuff. They'd only just added the guild missions, but they added loads more guild bounties, I think like 30. They added even more rewards. They refined it, as I said, for smaller guilds. And they also added something that, again, helped to spread people all over Tyria and experience the meta events in the game. So one big thing about the game, of course, were the large meta events that would have you fight, for example, the dragons. These were kind of strong, and people liked to do when the game launched, just because they were one of the few places where you had a chance to get a precursor drop out of one of these chests, so lots of people like to do them, but they did get boring very quickly. And there were many other meta events in the game, like the Fire Elemental in the Thorman Overreactor in Metrica Province, like the Hydra Queen, for example. Many different bosses that were out in the game that nobody was experiencing or enjoying at all. Well, with this update, Arenanet added like a bonus chest that you could get guaranteed for completing one of these events that would guaranteed drop you a rare item, which of course then could be salvaged for ectoplasm, and you could get a lot of money out of it, or you could save the ectos for your legendary or whatever you were doing. With this change, they significantly improved the stuff that you feel like you can do, because basically now you can come in game, you can complete your daily achievements for a daily chest, you can run a set of daily fractals for a daily chest, and then you can go out into the world and experience a daily meta event for a daily chest. These take you through 3 very different areas of PvE for PvE players, and all reward you in a very significant way, and that's something solid you can get in game and do every single time. And because there is so much of this stuff out there, because there are so many large meta events, there's a lot of choice for you each day, day by day. It doesn't feel like so much of a grind. This was a really good, really positive change. At first they were giving you a chest for every single meta event, but then that just flooded the economy, so you get 1 daily chest for completing it, which was very cool. Right, so moving on into April, we're almost done, guys. This is going to be an hour-long video, oh my god. So in April, they added Flame and Frost Retribution, which was the final chapter of Flame and Frost. In the previous chapter of Flame and Frost, as I've explained, they basically added very personal story-like stuff. In this chapter, they added a new dungeon to the game, like a full-on new dungeon, which was very, very cool, and which came with its own unique drops and new types of crafting materials and stuff, which was very cool. Again, though, this was temporary content, so that dungeon is now actually gone, but it was cool. It added a new type of boss, a new type of enemy that we hadn't really seen before, and was generally a lot of fun to play. That kind of capped off Flame and Frost. That was the defeat of the Flame Legion and the Dredge Alliance, and kind of the conclusion of the first chapter of the Living Story, and I'll come back to that in just a second. But also at the start of April, there was some other temporary content. For April Fools, Arenanet released to us another new activity minigame thing that is so much more than just a minigame. I did a video on it called the Super Adventure Box, which was a game within a game, basically, and it was like heavily inspired by kind of Metroid, Zelda, Mario, like 100 other retro things. And it was a full adventure, like an adventure inspired by these other games. Very jumping puzzle-ish, because, you know, there's a lot of platforming there, but it's not a particularly difficult jumping puzzle. There's a lot of RPG mechanics going on with it. It was a very strong, very solid element to the game that you could, again, do daily. Like, there was even more daily stuff that you could do there. That existed for a lot of April, but went away, and we're very much expecting that to come back, because there seems to be a lot of content planned for it. You could see that there were multiple worlds you could travel to. They just weren't in the game just yet. So this was temporary content, but is due to come back, and I'm guessing pretty soon as well, not too far away. So this was very cool. This is basically another, in my opinion, even though it's temporary, sort of a core feature of Guild Wars 2. It was a very, very strong aspect to the game, and we can expect to see that come back as well. That was a very cool April Fool's update, and again, that also added a lot of more unique skins, exclusive skins, which I believe were confirmed to not be coming back too, so they'll be worth something as well on the trading post soon enough. So anyway, that was the temporary stuff. Permanently in April, which of course was only last month, they added, again, loads more stuff to the guild missions. Have you noticed they've been adding loads more guild mission ever since they've came out? This was 30 new guild treks were added, a new guild rush was added, and then there was even more rebalances to the way that the guild content worked. Guild content is a large part of Guild Wars, which is good, because, you know, all those people ironically saying, oh, I can't believe it's called Guild Wars, and there's so little to do with the guilds, they've rectified that. They really have. So that takes us to May, and very close to the end of the video, because, hey, we're in May at the moment. May has added, I'm not going to go into massive specifics on it, because I might do another video on it, I'm not sure. But basically, the Living Story now, last month, the Living Story, the first chapter of it concluded. Flame and Frost is now over. Now the new chapter of the Living Story has started, and this is probably a good time, therefore, to kind of come back if you're even slightly tempted, because you can kind of experience this new chapter from its very beginning. This is a new chapter, kind of a new topic, a new area of the Living Story, called The Secret of South Sun. So do you remember the new map that I talked about they added way back when? And how it didn't have too much content on it? Well, now it's got that content. Now it will have that content, because they've added another chapter of the Living Story taking place pretty much entirely around this island. So there's lots of stuff to do there. They've added a new mini game to the game called Crab Toss, which again has got its own achievements and so forth and so forth. There are new rewards, and there's just generally stuff to do on South Sun. Again, it's not entirely substantial just yet, because it's the first month of this new chapter. Just like with Flame and Frost, we didn't see too much added at the start, but this will continue to evolve forward, and we're going to see a lot of stuff that we can actually participate on this island. So far, it's looking very strong. I once put out a video critiquing the personal story, and how a lot of characters in the personal story kind of feel redundant, because you kind of see them early on, and then they just kind of have no impact beyond that. And I questioned whether they'd ever have any significance in the plot for expansions. Well, I'm happy to say that a lot of those characters are returning now. Lord Farron, from a very specific branch of early human personal story stuff, is appearing in the Living Story content right now. So old characters are coming back, and they seem to be doing quite well. Arenanet are also putting out a lot of interviews and information and stuff on their channel about kind of the narrative design of it, which so far has been really interesting to read and see. So yeah, I think they're doing pretty well with it. As I say, you might see a video specifically about it, or if any of this has made you think, oh, I'll come back to the game, this is a good place to kind of hop in. You can go to this new island and experience some actual content over on South Sun. That's about it. That's basically what they've done in terms of a month-to-month basis. This game really has become a massive pitch to people who haven't played, haven't they? When I was originally designing this and like writing it out, it wasn't that for me. For me, it's just very interesting to look back through all of this old stuff and see where Arenanet have gone with the updates, because when you see it month by month, you kind of don't get the bigger picture. You don't see how much kind of has changed. Before I wrap up, though, I do want to give some attention to SPVP and World vs. World. I'll open up by saying, first of all, I think that it's sort of criminal how little attention these game types have had compared to PvE. I can appreciate that Arenanet have designed Guild Wars 2 as a primarily PvE game. I could do a video entirely on my thoughts with SPVP in particular, but they have added some significant stuff to those formats. So if you're a player that were most inspired and excited by them, you might find something here that they have added that you'll like a lot, but not so much has changed with these compared to PvE. But I'll run through SPVP. Basically, they just fixed tons of bugs to as the months have gone along. They refined early on, again I'm doing this in chronological order sort of, early on they like completely refined and changed the way Autobalance works, so it's a lot more fun. It was really annoying to be like about to win and having top points on your team and then the game just throws you to the other team. They do it a lot more intelligently now, the Autobalance, and it's not so annoying. Paid tournaments were added to Guild Wars 2, which were kind of 3 rounds and would reward you with some cool stuff like gems. It was pretty fun, but then they were removed again pretty quickly afterwards and replaced with 1v1 ranked queues. So actual rating can be acquired in Guild Wars 2. Do you remember I said that they added leaderboards to the game? Leaderboards are there for PvP. There's not enough of a community for PvP right now to really support the leaderboards, particularly on North America. EU sounds a lot more stable and a lot more fun. There's a lot more activity going on there. For NA, for example, I wasn't on the leaderboards at all because I quit PvPing sort of just before the leaderboards were added and the proper ranked was added. I came back about this time 3 weeks ago. I wasn't on the leaderboards at all, and in one night I got to like position 40 something, 40th out of the top 100. It was, so you can move very quickly on them, you can bomb very quickly, you can rise very quickly, and I think that devalues the leaderboards quite a lot. You tend to find a lot of teams, people saying, oh, who cares about leaderboards, which is a shame because that should be something people care about. I'm not sure whether it's just Arenanet's coding for it or whether we just need more people playing it, but leaderboards are there. That's a very significant thing. That's something that actually makes people feel like there's something to work towards. That would probably be the biggest change I can say so far. 2 new maps have been added since the launch of the game. One's called Temple of the Silent Storm, one's called Spirit Watch being the newer of them. They both introduce interesting secondary mechanics, but Conquest is still the primary game type, so if you hated Conquest, then PvP is still not going to be your cup of tea. Conquest can be good at the high end though. I think it can be pretty good. I just still stand by the idea that we should have GVG back. I think that Guild Wars 2's class balance and combat combined with maybe Guild Wars 1's game types would be like the perfect game, but that's not happened. They have said though that they are interested in adding other game types out there, so do be aware. Another big change was when you're playing ranked games or tournaments as it was back then, it locks your skills, your builds, your weapons all in. When I was originally early playing, that wasn't the case and the game was a very different experience. Your builds are locked now, so you have to be careful about that. It does make it a richer experience, trust me. It's much stronger for it. And very recently we had 2 large features finally added that we've been looking for a long time. Custom arenas have been added, so you can now own your own server. It's currently in beta, so only a few people can do it right now, but you can own your own server and you can change the rules on it. You can change how the nodes work, you can change how many players per team, you can change what maps are coming up and when. You can change an awful lot of stuff. You can host tournaments in them. You can password protect the servers and so on. Very strong. Arenanet are kind of putting a lot of eggs in that basket for the custom arenas. I don't think that's the most important thing for PvP, but that is a change that's happened and a significant and a strong one. And lastly as well, very strong for kind of casting and so forth, is Spectator Mode was added to SPVP. Cool. But Arenanet aren't enabling us to spectate on ranked matches, which I think is a bit of a mistake. Honestly, for myself, I think they've made a couple of mistakes with it. I really liked the 3-round tournament tournament system, even though it took a long time for the queues to pop. I think there's a lot of ways that they could have strengthened PvP, and I think they made a couple of wrong moves. Spectator mode is great, but it feels kind of pointless for the average player to use spectator mode because all you can spectate on are hot joins or specific servers, and what's the point in that? It seems kind of rubbish, basically. But Arenanet have got kind of their reasoning for why they're doing this. It seems a bit flimsy to me. They're saying they're trying to support casting, even though like nobody's really going to be inspired or interested to do it because they can't spectate on the ranked stuff. But you know, they're doing what they're doing. We have seen a bit of an increase on Twitch for SPVP recently since spectator mode was added. A lot of people are kind of considering, since these two things were added, the custom arenas and the spectator mode, this could kind of be the rebirth for Guild Wars 2. I'm a little bit more cynical, to be honest, but I have been playing PvP recently and I've been having a bit of fun with it. So yeah, those are the main things that have changed, guys. On the SPVP side of things, so quite substantial, I'd say, only because this most recent month, lots of big changes have happened. And lastly, for World vs. World, again, lots of bug fixes, lots of ways to like infiltrate into keeps and stuff that were just throwing balance off have been repaired. When the game first launched, there was a mechanic called the Orb of Power. Does anybody even remember that anymore? That was completely removed because people were exploiting it, and it hasn't been replaced by a similar mechanic, which I think is a big shame. I think Arenanet added the Orb of Power at some point during their development because they appreciated World vs. World needed something extra going on there, and it hasn't really been replaced by anything, and they've not brought the Orbs of Power back yet. I'm not really sure what to think of that. World vs. World isn't exactly my forte, but they have added other stuff. For example, when the game first launched, like one server could just totally whitewash the other, and then they'd get demoralized and they wouldn't play, and it would just be one server owns everything. They've made several changes that stops that happening. First of these changes was basically they added new breakout events. So losing servers now get these breakout events, which basically add NPCs that players can rally around to actually push forward, and basically it helps them get an upper hand. The second of these changes was that they rebalanced the way the outmanned buff works. It now gives you a lot of new stuff. So generally, in my experience, I haven't really seen one server totally dominate another anymore. There's always interesting stuff going on in World vs. World, which is good. Another big thing, though, probably the biggest change for World vs. World for me, is they've added basically a new way of leveling up in World vs. World through something called World Ranks, okay? So basically, as you play in World vs. World, you gain World Experience. And as you gain that, you'll unlock World vs. World skill points, which can be spent on like exclusive World vs. World abilities and passive buffs and stuff, like allowing you to carry more supply, or do more damage to guards, or take less damage from enemy guards, and so forth. There's a real sense of personal player progression in World vs. World now. I think originally when the devs were kind of making the game, that was supposed to be filled by the World vs. World achievements, perhaps, but they are just so ungodly difficult to do, it wasn't quite panning out. There is a really strong new skill system, like a new type of experience and everything in World vs. World that makes you feel like you're really making progress in the game type, which is very, very strong, and it adds a lot of progression and really brings the game type alive to me. I've been playing more World vs. World recently, and only because of this change. This was a good, strong change. In addition to that, though, to incentivize people further, the stuff that the vendors are selling, like the weapons and armor, that's been continuously updated. There's lots of new skins and different things you can get from those characters. There's new options as well for player culling. Player culling was where the game would make enemies disappear to save on like server resources and your system resources, so it just wouldn't crap your PC out. So there might be a huge fight going on, but you'd only see a couple of enemies of the Zerg. There are actually options for how bad you want culling to occur now, and server-side culling is gone completely. So basically, if you want, you can see the full armies, and it's unbelievable. Seeing how big two massive Zergs, when they clash together, is just like the most incredible thing you can see. It will make some PCs cry, but if you've got a PC that's capable of it, you should have always been allowed to see that stuff, and now you can, and it looks very, very cool. Also, a couple of rebalances that I feel like are quite important. First of all, a lot of siege weaponry has been rebalanced time and time again, so it feels a lot more strong and a lot more useful where it has to. And also, they've just added a new item type to World vs. World, which are traps. So you've got siege weapons, and you've got traps as well now, and you can set large traps for Zergs to come across, and they can like sap supply out of your enemies and so forth, which is another very cool, interesting mechanic that they've just added. So yeah, both SPVP and World vs. World are looking much stronger than they did at launch. Certainly SPVP has come a long way, I would say, and anyone that was interested in it when the game launched, I know Arenanet was saying a lot about how they want to be a big esport. Right now they're just riding on kind of the fact that a lot of esports take a long time to grow. I think a lot of people are divided on whether they believe Guild Wars 2 will ever truly get there, but they've been making good steps, and World vs. World also has been making good steps too. And also from data mining, a lot of people have seen a potential new map that might come into World vs. World that's been discussed quite a bit. So with another new map there as well, we could see interesting stuff coming forward. But that's it, guys. That is my 9-month retrospective on Guild Wars 2. I ended up talking for ages, but hey, you know, my Guild Wars 2 video is a little bit further between now, so I don't mind putting out a really long one. If you've watched this far, thanks very much for watching. I know the audience for this video might be a bit weird, but I quite like to do this just for myself at least, to kind of put a cap on everything that's come so far, and kind of just now we can look forward. And I feel like I've summed up everything that was quite important, which is a good feeling. You know, I think we'll see a lot of content like this come out when the game's a year old, or maybe it would have even been wise when the game was 6 months old. But you know, I'll do it now, and if there's even more stuff that I can kind of recap in 3 months' time, then we can have a look at it then too. But yeah, so there you go, guys. If you've watched this and you haven't actually played Guild Wars 2 for a while, which I expect probably is the minority of people at the end of the day, but if you have, maybe give the game a shot, because there has been a lot of stuff that's changed. Certainly, if you think of everything I've said, and also that I've maybe said 5% of the total changes, it's just all the other changes were little fixes and improvements and stuff, the game can feel quite different now. It really can. Let me know what you think about how the game's come overall in 9 months. I find it very interesting to compare these 9 months to maybe Guild Wars 1's first 9 months. It took a long time for them to finally put something extra out for Guild Wars 1, I think, and you know, they're a much bigger company now, but is this everything we were hoping for? Most of my time playing the game, honestly, with my guild has been people saying, oh, they're not doing enough quick enough. And now I look back over 9 months, they've added a lot of stuff. When the game launched, they had these kind of big claims, these grandiose claims about, oh, look, we're going to support our game better than other MMOs do. If we don't prove ourselves as better than other MMOs directly at launch, we'll prove it, because after the game's out, we're going to give the best support for this game, far better support than we see anywhere else. And, you know, it's a lot that they've done, and they really are, I think, trying to do it for the betterment of the game. Particularly around South Sun, I got very jaded by this community, because a lot of people seem to be suggesting that Arenanet were giving up on all of their goals, they'd lied to us, and that they'd just suddenly become this terrible company. And I really don't think that was the case at all. I don't think they were trying to pull the wool over our eyes. I think that they were adding Ascended gear because they'd seen when the game launched there were a lot of people who were asking for more character progression. It's a staple of this genre, and I think that they did it in the best way they could have. They've added that extra progression, but they haven't drowned the experience out in grinding for stuff. I think they've done it really quite well, and I was never too worried about where they were going. If you look at everything that they've added to the game, that stuff during the South Sun, the Ascended gear, is really only been a small facet of it. They've been doing a lot of the other stuff to try and improve the game, and it's still very much true to their vision, I'd say. But yeah, that's kind of my opinion. I think they've been putting out stuff at a good rate. You know, if the game had launched with less bugs and stuff, and the professions more finely balanced, maybe they would have had more time to add more content. One thing I would love to see them return to, certainly, is what they did at Halloween. Halloween, they added loads of new explorable achievements and jumping puzzles and stuff just out of the blue. Expanded the map, gave us lots of stuff to do, and it's a good, at least, if you were like playing all day, it would be like a day's worth of content. I'd love to see them do that more frequently. That was really, really cool. The only other thing I guess that people are questioning right now is whether this is worth it. Should they have been doing all of this, or should they have been going to work on an expansion immediately? And that is a question I'm not sure I have the answer to for myself. I'm very happy with what we've got, but I feel like I'd be a lot more excited about the game if I knew that there was some large expansion already in the works that was going on behind closed doors somewhere, but it just doesn't seem like that's been happening for a long time. So that's an interesting perspective to look at, I think. And so far, I think they've been very strong to their word about having like continuous content updates. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. That's it, guys. That's my Guild Wars 2 video for today. Another Guild Wars 2 mysteries coming out soon enough. I'm doing mostly Guild Wars 2 mysteries, so I wanted to kind of break the mold a little bit. But there you go. That's 9 months for me. That's my opinions. And yeah, I guess I will see you next time. And I would love to hear any of your thoughts. I'll catch you later, everyone.